Hey everybody, welcome to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and here on my YouTube channel, and in this video I want to show you 3 tips to helping your mix sound more professional. But before we get to that, if you like what you see in this video, please hit that subscribe button and also hit the notification bell so you know when I post another video, and also go out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com and get your 5 free mixing training courses worth about $110. It's my way to say thank you to you for visiting HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. So let's jump on over here into Studio One. So I have a mix up here. It's kind of a final mix. I'm going to try to not play the vocal line here so we don't have any copyright issues, but I want to go ahead and I want to show you 3 tips that you can use to really help. Now, there's lots of different tips in engineering and in mixing in particular to help you get a more professional, a more, just a great, better sounding mix. So I'm just going to show you 3, but the 3 I'm going to show you today are not some of the more common ones that you may have heard of in the past. These are some that a lot of engineers don't talk about, so I want to show you that today. So the first thing I want to do is I want to solo up drums. Now this is a live drum kit here, so let's just listen to our drums here. Okay, this is a live recording that was okay, so we got some mic bleed and stuff happening. It was all recorded in a live room, so there was some isolation, but not complete isolation, but that's okay. So tip number 1 is phase correction with drums. Okay, now there are very few plugins that I say to my students and my followers you absolutely need. You don't need anything, but when I have a plugin, or when this is one of the plugins that I say that you should have in your toolbox if you work with drums that were recorded that are not just software drums, but live recorded drums, whether it's in a studio or in a live environment, like in a live performance environment, you ought to have a phase correction tool. And there are a few on the market. The one that I tend to like the most is Audio Align by Sound Radix, and you can go out to the Sound Radix website and check it out. I've been using this for years, and I also have about a 30-minute YouTube video in my archive. Just search it out in my archive there, and you'll see the full review on how to use this in detail. It's fairly easy to use, but it really helps. Now, why do you want phase correction on drums? What is the phase problem? Well, whenever you have microphones or multiple microphones on an instrument, such as drums, you are going to have frequencies that are going to cancel out from each other, and you're going to have some phasing problems. Okay, now that's the basic description. It gets a lot more technical, but I want to keep this simple. And what that causes is that'll cause the drum kit to tend to sound kind of thin. It doesn't have as much punch, as much liveliness, especially in the kick and the snare. So you use a phase correction tool such as Audio Align to phase correct everything, so everything is in balance and it just sounds a lot better. So let me demonstrate that for you. Okay, so here, Audio Align you use across all of your tracks. It's the first plugin that I use on my kick, 2 kicks, snares, tops, bottom. You'll see them all across the top here, Audio Align. And again, go check out the YouTube video on how to use it. I just want to show you what it can do. So if I play back these drums, I'm going to highlight all the drums, and if I just click this button here, I can turn off all the instances of Audio Align all at the same time. So we're going to start with the Audio Align engage, and I'm going to take it away, and I want you to listen for the snare drum and the kick drum in particular, how you're going to hear the snare get thinner sounding. It's not going to have as much low end to it, and the same thing with the kick drum. It's not going to sound as thumpy or as punchy. Okay, so here we go. We'll start with it on and we'll take it away. Okay, listen to that snare. That's with, without. With. Okay, so hopefully you can hear the difference there. The bottom low end of the snare gets a lot more beefy. It doesn't sound as thin. The kick drum gets a little more punchy. Now, depending on the engineer that recorded the drums, these drums were recorded pretty well, where the engineer did take care in making sure that you had as good mic placement as he possibly or she possibly could have. But more times than not, especially when you're dealing with drums that were recorded in not the optimal space, or maybe by not a pro level engineer, someone that doesn't have a lot of experience in miking up a drum kit, if you get those files sent to you, or if that's yourself recording your own drum kit in your home, you may have a lot of phase problems, and Audio Align is going to make even more of an audible difference. But even on this drum kit that was recorded really well, you can hear how it just gives a little bit more thump and a little bit more beef to the drum kit. So that's phase correction, and once again, that's Audio Align by Sound Radix. Check that out. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is a thing that I call EQ filtering. Okay, now what EQ filtering, the way it works is right after after auto align, and this goes on every single track in our mix, drums, bass, guitar, vocals, where we put the very first plugin we use is we're going to use an EQ. And I happen to be using the Pro Q2 by FabFilter, but you can use a stock EQ, you can use any EQ to do this. But this is nice because you can isolate the sound, and I'll show you that in a second. And what we do is we use low cut and high cut filters on all the instruments, where we go in and we dial in and we get rid of all the low rumble that we don't want for a particular instrument. And then we also go to the top end and do high cut filters. A lot of people and a lot of you have probably heard about using a low cut filter on everything, but not a lot of people talk about the high cut filter. Okay, you also have a lot of buzz and a lot of at the top that really on a single track may not be very audible, but the cumulative effect of that is going to add a little less clarity to your mix. So by incorporating low cut and high cut filters, your instruments are going to have a more focused sound to them. The mix in and of itself, it's going to have a little bit more focus and a little more clarity. So before I show you how to do it on a particular instrument, let's go ahead and let's just demonstrate the before and after. And I won't do the vocals so much again because I don't want to get hit with copyrights here. But again, the FabFilter is the second plugin in the chain here. So if I turn it off on one, you'll see it turns it off on all of them, okay, including the bass and the guitar and the vocal. So I'm going to start with it in. I'm going to bring the whole mix in minus the vocal, okay, and I want you to listen again. And this is a little bit more of a subtle kind of a difference. So hopefully you're listening to this on a good set of studio headphones and or a good set of monitors, earbuds, iPads, iPhones, those kinds of things. You may not hear it as much, but if you do this in your studio, you'll start to hear a difference. So let me bring back this loop. We're going to start with it, and then I'm going to take away that EQ filter and just hear what the overall effect is. Before. Okay, so what I hear there, and hopefully you can hear it over YouTube as well, is the snare tends to get a little bit more present. The guitar tends to open up a little bit, and it seems like what sounded like maybe kind of almost the effect of a thin blanket laying over the top of the speakers kind of lifts up, and you can hear everything just a little bit better. Once again, depending on how well the tracks were recorded, how well the microphones were placed, how the engineer, if they did any EQ on the way into the DAW, if they did any low cuts or high cut filters, will make this more or less audible. But what you'll find is by incorporating this, you drive a lot more focus to the instrumentation. Now, let me just show you on a track here. Let's just say the top snare, for example. Let me mute everything and just undo the snare here. Let's see what this kind of sounds like. So here's our snare top, and I'll turn it up so you can hear it a little bit better. So again, our first plugin, we put a low cut filter. Okay, and then what I like about this FabFilter is I click on the little headphones here, and you can hear the low end that's being rolled off. And what happens is sometimes FabFilter will do that. Okay, so if I take this, what I do is I roll it right about to the fundamental frequency, and then I back it off a little. You hear kind of that real muddiness on the bottom end, okay? Now on the top end, you can hear that kind of at around 13K, 14K. Okay, this is rolled off at about 83 Hertz. Okay. So any you can hear a little bit of kick drum in there when I highlight the little headphones there, and you can hear a little bit of bass guitar because again it was kind of a live performance. It takes away the mud, and then on the top end it takes away that kind of that annoying kind of real top end, kind of bitey, shrilly kind of a feel. Now you want to be careful, and every snare is recorded a little different. You don't want to cut it back too much and lose the crack of the snare or some of the air around the snare. So you just kind of take the point and you kind of just move it in until you like what you hear. And what I love about the FabFilter is you can use the headphones to isolate that sound. It's a little bit easier to hear, whereas on most stock EQs you don't have that. So you don't want to get rid of the crack. Right around there, right around 11, 12K. Okay, now if I take this away, you're going to hear it more on the low ends. Okay, so it cleans up the bottom end a little bit. Again, and on one single track, it's going to be very, very subtle. But what this really does is when you do this on all of your track, it's the accumulative effect of it is what really makes a difference. And again, it's that another little notch forward to helping your mix sound more professional with a little more clarity. So you take the phase correction, you take the EQ filtering concept across all your tracks. And then that brings me to the last thing that we're going to talk about for this video. My third tip of the day is parallel compression. And now parallel compression I have all the way down here in purple. And again, we're going to get rid of the vocal. We're going to get rid of the vocal track altogether. Oh, let's turn those back up a little bit so we can just deal with the instruments. Now, parallel compression, a lot of you probably hear about using parallel compression on drums. That's where it's more commonly used, to be able to give the drums a little bit more punch, a little bit more life. But what I like to do is I use parallel compression on all of my groupings of instruments. So for most of my mixes, for example, I have a busing system where all my groupings of instruments are going to my regular buses. In this case, I have a drum bus, a bass bus, a guitar bus, and a vocal bus, small session. Then I go ahead and I copy those and I make the same amount of buses for my parallel track. So I have P drums, P standing for parallel compression, P bass, P guitar, P vocals. Okay, and now the concept is during the rest of the mix, before I get to parallel compression, most of my compression is being done in a very controlled way. I'm not over compressing everything. I'm doing everything in very small doses, maybe a couple of dB, 2-3 dB, just to kind of level out the performance and correct any problems. But the track still has a lot of dynamics, especially in a song like this, which is kind of like a rock, blues, rock track, okay, with live musicians. We don't want to squash it too much. We use the parallel tracks to over compress, and then we tuck those tracks in underneath the buses from a volume perspective. And what it does is it just gives the entire mix a little more girth, a little bit more punch, and a little bit more, for lack of a better term, a hi-fi sound, if you will. It's not really a volume thing, it's more of a punch clarity thing. So let me demonstrate. So again, we're going to highlight all the parallel tracks. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to, let's see, we're going to mute the vocal. We're going to listen. No, we don't want to do that. There we go. We're going to go ahead and we're going to listen to it with parallel compression. Then I'm just going to click the mute button and take all the parallel tracks away. And you can hear what it does. So here we go. Okay, can you hear the difference? It's a really big difference here in the studio. Hopefully that comes across on YouTube. So what do you hear? You don't really hear things get a little louder. It gets a little more present. It gets a little bit more clarity, but it gets a lot more lively. It has a lot more punch, but it's not muddy, okay? And it helps things cut through the mix. So what you do, again, for example, on drums is the most common that people use, and you can use any compressor for this. I happen to be using the 1176 by Universal Audio. That's what a lot of people do with drum bus, but you can use anything. And what I'm using is a very fast release, a very fast attack, and I'm squashing the bejesus out of it. You can look, you'll see on the meter here. Okay, 10, almost 20, 10, 15 dB. Now, if I listen to that track just on its own, That's the parallel track by itself. Doesn't sound that great, right? But when I bring the drums in and I just tuck it in underneath the drums, we're just doing drums right this moment. I take it away. Okay, and you can put in more or less depending on your personal taste. But I do the same thing with the bass and for the guitar. The bass, I just happen to be using an LA2A. Once again, I'm squashing it, and you'll see that right here. You'll see how much I'm compressing. Okay, squashing it, and then I'm tucking it in underneath the rest of the tracks. So again, what you get is a final result, and I did the same thing with the guitars. I just happened to be using another an 1176, the Blue Stripe by Universal Audio, and on the vocal I used a Fairchild. But by using this thing and by using this concept of parallel compression and over compressing and tucking it underneath, okay, so parallel compression on all your grouping of instruments. That will help enhance the overall mix. It'll give it a little more punch, a little bit more clarity, and it gives it a little bit more of a hi-fi sound. It doesn't necessarily get louder, and you can regulate more or less of that parallel compression on how you see fit. And you'll still have a track that has all the dynamics that you want to have in it, because the main players are still the buses, where the compression throughout the individual tracks was done in a very minimal amount, and you just bring in that over compression as much as you see fit. So I hope you found these 3 tips helpful. Again, it's not 3 tips that you hear people talk about most. Parallel compression, phase correction on drums, and the EQ filtering across all your tracks is really going to help your overall mix have a little bit more clarity, a little bit more focus, and overall sound a little bit more professional. So until the next video, I've been Dave with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and I want to mention, we talked a little bit about parallel compression, we talked about EQ filtering. I teach a lot more tips to help you with getting a more professional mix in the training course that I have called Mixing Made Easy Volume 2. You can go out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com and check that out. We spend an hour on parallel compression. We talk about EQ filtering as well as some other tips that'll help you bring your mixes to the next level, I promise. And then also, if you really want to learn, really dive down deep into the world of parallel compression and listen to different types of compressors and why you choose one compressor over another, go check out my course, The Power of Parallel Compression. Again, right on HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. And I want to give you a coupon code that you can see in the description box below. I'll leave both links to both training courses. I'm going to give you a coupon code that you, my followers, can use at checkout to give you 25% off. The coupon code is ME25OFF. Yes, ME25OFF. It'll be down in the description box below. Go use that coupon and get 25% off either one or both of these courses, and you'll learn more about the tips that you can employ in your mixes, and it will help you get your mixes to sound more professional, I promise. So until the next video, I will see you all soon. Thank you so much for your support. Make sure to subscribe and take care.